So this is where we left off. So we have a map as to what we intend to design. So eventually what's going to happen is we're going to be able to create these independent objects, yet they're going to be linked together. Hence, we're going to have what we call a linked list. We're going to be able to traverse it either or populate it. So we need to populate and traverse. Okay, so these will be some of the tasks that we will be doing in our program. So let's look at this example here that we're putting together. Let's say we create our structure for client. Let's go ahead and do that. And struct client, okay? And we're going to define the members that are going to be in client. So, for example, char name, and let's give it 20 characters. That will be to store the first name, right? And then the next one will be float balance. Okay? Now, what else do we need? One important factor. We need a pointer of type client that we're going to use to point to other clients. That's the linking part of what we're going to create with our linked list. So how do you do this? You create client. First, it's a structure, so struct. Now, if I had done type def, I don't have to type struct, but for now, we're doing everything formal. And this is a pointer. And this pointer, I'm going to call it next, so semicolon. Now, close curly brace, put a semicolon, that's my definition. So basically, I have three elements in there. A payload, which is composed of two elements, a name and a balance. And then some sort of a pointer here that allows me to link the various instances of these clients that I will create and then be able to link them. Okay? All right, so let me compile this for a second here just to make sure everything is good. So syntax-wise, we're good. All right, so how do we use it? So we want to create what we call a node or our first client, right? So a client in a list, if you're taking a data structure course, will be called a node. So a list will be composed of many nodes. Our node in particular has a combination of two items as payload plus the actual link to the next node. So what you're going to need to create is create your, so let me write down this in pure C comments, create the first node. And then what we're going to do is create the next node and create the next node. So we're going to do this without loops, except when we're ready to read the content. Even then, we can move forward without a loop, and then we'll have other examples for that purpose. And then create the next node. Okay? And then what are you going to do? You're going to link them, right? Link the nodes. And then you're going to repeat this every time you need to add a new node. And then when we're done, what we'd like to do is traverse the list of nodes to inspect content. Inspect content. Okay? So that is our basic strategy. Let me spell that out. That is our basic strategy on how we're going to do this. Now, one of the first things you might want to do is to create a pointer called head that will point to the first node or the second node or whatever you want it to point to. Remember, if you're going to create a node, the first one you're going to create is the tail for our example. And you're going to need a pointer head as well pointing at it because we're going to move that head pointer as we move. So first, let's create our client, right? So we can do something like this, struct client CL1, right? Nothing can stop me from creating my first client. So let me just compile here, and there you have it. But I'm going to do a couple things. So the first node is what we call the tail node. So let me just put this right here. So that's the tail node. So we're going to have to do a few things with this tail node. Okay? You're going to take the CL1, dot. Now notice here, you have choices. And we're going to do dot next, and we're going to make it equal to null. So we're grounding that one, so it's not pointing to anything. But we have to let it know, hey, I need a null pointer at this stage. We're going to use that when we're ready to traverse. As long as we don't meet some object dot next is null, we keep moving. So it's a great flag that indicates that we've arrived to the last part of the list. Let me just compile here. Excellent. So now, what else do we need? We need a head. So you need to create a head. And guess what? Let's do the head here, outside of this creations here. So how do you do this? Client. It's a struct again. Struct. Client. And this time, it's a pointer. And call it head if you want. Okay? Excellent. So let's compile this. There you have it. Excellent. So what can we do with the head? Well, head is going to be equal to the address of CL1. So now we know that pointer is, the head is pointing at CL1. The next time around, when we have the next node, the head will point to CL2, for example. Right? But we're going to have to reassign it. Excellent. Can we populate the payload? Right? Can we populate the payload for this node? The answer is absolutely. Right? So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to ask the user to enter a name and a balance. Right? So let's do it where it's interactive. So printf. Enter the username, the client name. Okay. And we're going to do a scanf. Now remember, this is an array of characters. So %s, and do not put %. The name is an actual address, but it belongs to cl1.name. So it belongs to that particular object, right? We've seen this before. Let me just compile here for a second, just to make sure everything's good. Fantastic. So next, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to ask for the balance. So printf, enter the balance. Okay, and then we're going to do scanf. And we're going to store that %f and %cl1 dot balance. Oops, did that twice. There you go. So in that particular space, you're going to have to dereference because name is an address. So balance, you have to tell it, store it at that address. As a matter of fact, can we quickly check if the data got loaded properly? So this will be a test quickly. We're gonna take that line off and print it when we're ready to inspect the content of the list. But right now, just to make sure that our client node CL1 has the actual data that I stored in, right? So printf, maybe something like this, %s. And then /t, give me and then put a $sign. And then %.2f /n. So give me 2 decimal point precision for this one. And that would be cl1 dot name, comma, cl1 dot balance. And let's see if this works. So let's compile and run. Okay, so what is it doing? It's asking me to enter the name. So Jane, it's asked me to enter a balance, 67.89, and let's see if we get the result. And sure enough, we have full access to it. So we've populated node 1. We have a pointer head pointing at the beginning address of CL1, right? Or the actual address of this node. And internally, there is a pointer within CL1 pointing to null. Okay? So it's a little bit of maintenance to be done with the tail part of the ever-growing list we're going to have in our next video. We're going to create the next node, and we're going to link it to CL1, right? Okay, so I'll see you again for the next lesson.